Come on! Okay, we're all brethren here. Many of us know about Australia last Sunday and the Hanukkah celebration. I'm here to play Christmas carols, but I think in honor of Hanukkah, we need to do one more. Merry Christmas! Happy Hanukkah!
Everyone, here it goes. Here it I. Awesome. So, welcome everyone to our Christmas STE event. Thank you for everyone joining us. My name is Bobby Stevens. I am the president of the Society of Television Engineers. We've got a great team here. Hey, watch your mouth. So, in the spirit of Christmas and Hanukkah, we're going to do a quick raffle, and then I will introduce our guest speaker, Bill, and the very interesting discussion on the organization. So, let's do our raffle. So, everyone, pull out your tickets. So, we're going to give away 2 Amazon gift cards, as well as a bottle of wine courtesy of Piper Digital. Here we go. So here we go. Who wants to maybe want to pick out the ticket? Belinda? Belinda, you're on. You're on. Come on. Let's pull a ticket. There's yours. Okay, I'll hold on to yours. All right. Here we go. This one is, here we go. It is 7014. Who's got 7014? All right, Joe. There you go. That's the first one. Ticket? Oh, yeah, you definitely need to make sure with you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Mix them again. All right. Next one. Oop, there comes. Yep. All right. Here we go. 7004. Who's got 7004? 7004. Anybody? Oh, going once. 7004. It might have been Patterson. Gotta be in it to win it. Oh no, here we go. All right, Mr. Hogan, 7004. All right. Thank you. Yes, that is the correct ticket. One more for the bottom one. All right, here we go. 7009. 7009. Oh, there we go. All right, very. Oh, yeah, just like Joe. Right one. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our Christmas. Yep. Super. So next in our program, we have Pass the Mic. This is for anybody who has positions open, announcements, SIMT, new technology. Because I know Tom, he's got new technology. Oh, there he goes. so, um, so anybody have anything at the tables that they would like to announce? He? No? Belinda has something. All right.
Hey, everybody, I'm Belinda with 12 Labs. It's an AI company that does search and summarization. And on our website, we have a lot of engineering, LLM, and solutions architects positions available. So if any of you are looking for work, I'd like to encourage you to take a look at our site. It's a great company. They are literally the hot AI company in the industry these days. So check it out. 12labs.io.
.io, everyone. Awesome. How about this table? Jeff, diversified hiring? Diversified is always hiring. All right.
Hold up. I'm off to it.
What? Yeah, he's done. He's spoken already. We're moving on. Anybody here, George? Up, Mike.
Hi, Mike Kavanaugh, Keycode Media. We just got final sign off on one of the first end-to-end broadcast stations, Denver 7 KMGH script station, full 2110, absolute infrastructure from end to end, and we're really excited that we finished it, and I think this will be a great presentation tonight. So thank you.
Congratulations to Key Code. All right. How about this table? Anybody? Doug? Nope. All right. And over here, Marilyn, anything going on? All right. Fantastic. All right. Well, we'll get on to the main event. So, Bill Apker, he has spoken and written many articles on LinkedIn. And I will hand it off to this gentleman. You ready? Awesome. Thank you very much. Everyone, give a hand.
That's it. That's it. Sounds like it works. Good evening, everybody. How's it going? Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it. Well, I think I'll start with just a little bit, kind of some upcoming events I thought everybody might be interested in. So, we're 14 days away from 2026, if you can believe that. Unbelievable, right? 175 days away from the FIFA World Cup here in Los Angeles, kicking off at SoFi Stadium. And if we really think about it, we're 939 days away from the LA Olympics. Only 939 days. With the Coliseum being the first stadium in history to host the 3 different games in 32, 84, and 2028. That's kind of remarkable if you think about it. And for 2028, the opening ceremonies are going to be split between SoFi Stadium and the Coliseum. with the NBC domestic hub obviously being at Universal City and the global IBC over in Hollywood. Nothing says simple signal flow like 4 major events and LA traffic, to be honest. And that gives us, Jeff, just to make sure you know this, it gives us exactly 81,216,000 seconds to fix PTP. Get on that. But here's the truth, PTP is not the real problem. It's just the most visible symptom of what we're dealing with today. And the ecosystem has evolved, as many of you know, faster than our ability to see it. Tonight, I want to talk about something that affects every engineer in this room, whether you're retired or active or somewhere in between. Visibility. Not monitoring and not dashboards, but visibility. And not just inside the device, but across the entire ecosystem. Because the truth is, broadcast has never been more capable and has never had more complexity and never had less clarity than today. So let's talk about why. I'm going to start off with a metaphor that might surprise you. The predator and prey metaphor. Systems eating each other. That's not the point. The point is a broadcast plant isn't a diagram. It's an ecosystem, a living, breathing environment where systems feed each other, depend on each other, stretch each other out, and collapse together. And you, the engineer, live inside that ecosystem. You feel every shift, every timing drift, every unpredictable handoff, every moment something doesn't behave the way it should. You see all the motion, but you don't always know why the motion is happening. And that got me thinking about a place I visited just before Thanksgiving. NASA Mission Control. And this is the NASA Mission Control from the 60s. The room where humans first left the Earth and landed on another world. And what struck me about it wasn't the history, it wasn't the Apollo capsule, it wasn't the retro buttons or the sets, or every console filled with cigarettes, because they did a really good job of that, by the way. It was the architecture of that room, because that room was the world's first occupational intelligence engine. Every system, from the spacecraft to telemetry to comms to navigation, life support, all fed into a unified operational truth. One room, one set of eyes, one coherent picture of the entire ecosystem. NASA had mission control. Broadcast never really did. For 50 years, we've tried to interpret an ecosystem using device-level visibility. And tonight, I want to show you why that approach has its limits. You, the engineers, sit inside the ecosystem. Manufacturers sit on the outside of it. We see our products, we see our logs, we see our alarms, we see our successes, and we see our failures. But what we don't see is the ecosystem. Our view is from a tiny spotlight highlighting our own products. Now, let me take you back to my early days. A lot of you guys will understand this. The first Utah analog router I had one error indicator light on it. An incandescent bulb. It glowed that warm, fuzzy feeling that modern LEDs today call relaxed. I don't know who was relaxed when that light came on or stayed on, but the point here is, what was it? Was it the power supply, a cross point, a communications failure, a path issue, the backplane? One bulb, thousands of possibilities. And you know what the crazy part is despite everything we built since, despite IP, cloud, metadata, automation, orchestration, sometimes today we're not much better off. Because now we have a Niagara Falls worth of data. Every device in the ecosystem is providing more data than we can honestly look at anymore. But the clarity hasn't kept up. And in 2025, here's what changed. Failures don't necessarily happen inside devices anymore. They happen between them. They happen when timing drifts, when metadata doesn't travel cleanly, when automation fails to start properly, when the IP flow gets reshaped just enough to cause symptoms downstream. The ecosystem breaks before the devices break. And that's why device monitoring alone will never give us the ecosystem clarity that we need. When something breaks today, I can tell you from experience that we get calls in all the time saying, well, we have this problem, and we look at the logs, we can't tell where it is. We're asking a million questions. What was the time? What was the situation? What did your operators do? We don't see the issues necessarily. Nothing unusual on our end is normally what comes out of it because we can't pinpoint everything. And we're not wrong. The only thing we see is our little window, our little piece of the ecosystem, that little spotlight. You're the only people that really see the entire ecosystem. But when you're asked to diagnose issues, no single human, no vendor can reasonably track anymore. Especially when today's broadcast engineers are expected to be a broadcast engineer, a network engineer, IP transport specialist, a timing expert, a cloud architect, a data analyst, a programmer, a troubleshooter across multiple domains simultaneously, jack of all trades, master of all trades. It's just not sustainable anymore. Not for one person, not for one team. So we need a different layer of intelligence. During my same vacation, I was lucky enough to get on the bridge of the cruise ship we were on. And one thing really stood out to me because that bridge was the operational intelligence center of the entire ship. Everything came into that one point: navigation, engine load, stabilizers, environmental systems, safety systems, cabin controls, logistics, data everywhere, and a bridge crew full of people monitoring all of it and interpreting it in real time. Broadcast is kind of the same. We have a bunch of engineers trying to interpret what's going on inside the facility. What we did do is solve data collection. What we didn't solve is the meaning behind the data. This year's NAB had more monitoring systems come out than ever, more dashboards than ever, more telemetry platforms than ever. Everyone trying to solve their slice, but nobody's solving the ecosystem problem. The industry sees the wall, but not the doorway. And to be fair, aggregation is the first doorway. Time aligned, vendor neutral, correlated, searchable, and complete. Aggregation is the missing control layer that we desperately need. It turns the lights on inside the ecosystem. Now, from an operational intelligence point of view, there are two different things going on, and both are right. For a broadcast engineer, having the ability to understand workflow behavior, seeing cause and effect, predicting failure paths, understanding stress relationships, seeing the whole ecosystem, not just the device. From a manufacturer point of view, understanding customer reality, seeing what really breaks in the real workflows, designing for truth, not lab assumptions, reducing escalations, and improving product direction. OI gives clarity to engineers, OI gives truth to manufacturers. At both sides, we need desperately. One of the easiest way for me to explain OI is if you look at retailers. Retailers have been using OI for years. Analyzing purchase behavior, returns, trends, pairings, store flow. Retail OI, customer behavior, insight, and action. Broadcast OI, workflow behavior, insight, operational clarity. We just never labeled it that way. So let me tell you why this matters to me, because I think this would resonate with a lot of people in this room. Whether I was a satellite engineer in Skagit County, Washington, standing in the rain at 10:58 p.m., beaming a signal back to the station, while my reporter and photographer stood in knee-deep water telling the story, and me hoping the water didn't wash them away, or if I was a TD setting up the news at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to balance the chaos before sunrise. Back then, I really didn't know who built the gear. I didn't know the engineers in Belgium or Germany or Canada or Kuwait, Croatia. The people writing the firmware, designing the hardware, or building transport systems. What I knew was the story had to make air, and it had to be clean. From the software engineers across continents to support teams answering the call at 2 a.m., to sales teams, to CTOs, to the engineer in the room, we all work for one person, and that's a storyteller. Engineers exist to make storytelling reliable. OI exists to give engineers the clarity it has always lacked. Once we achieve real OI, manufacturers can stop chasing symptoms. Software engineering gets real clarity and accelerates development. Systems integration becomes easier and interoperability gets simpler. Engineering returns to creativity, to building, to strengthening the foundation storytellers depend on. This is the industry we deserve. Now let's break down these OI layers a little bit. Layer one is data ingest. Most vendors today can capture logs, metrics, flows, timing data, alarms, and API outputs. The challenge isn't data collection anymore. We've solved that part. Layer two is correlation, and this is where the first signs of progress really show up. A few vendors today can do basic logic correlations, simple if-then logic, time-aligned events, cause and effect matching, cross-system tagging, metadata stitching. It's not a true ecosystem intelligence yet, but it's the beginning of understanding relationships instead of isolated systems. Then we reach the OI layer. This is where correlation turns into interpretation, where we stop asking what happened and start answering why did it happen, and what does it mean for the rest of the workflow. This is the layer broadcast still doesn't have, and honestly, it's the layer that we desperately need. We're not quite there yet. Layer four is the human understanding. And this will always matter for every engineer. No matter how much data we have, it still needs to translate into some operational context. Does this matter? Is this expected? Is this a failure or just behavior? Only engineers can make that call. And finally, we have AI, machine assisted operations. This is where AI agents eventually step in. And it's interesting, right before Thanksgiving, Microsoft actually had something very similar to talk about AI agents, because they see the same problem that we're having, where they need AI to interpret the data that's coming in and be able to understand what that data means. And because of that, we're not going to get there for a few more years, I believe, just because if Microsoft is just starting to do it this year, we're at least 2 years away from that real opportunity. What all this comes down to, though, is this pathway. This is a pathway from noise to signal to meaning to clarity. Technology gave us flexibility. Data gave us information. OI will finally give us clarity. And clarity lets us return to the reason we all enter this field, to support the storytellers who shape the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. That's operational intelligence. It's really, like he said, the environment and everything that we do. It's all involved. So thank you, everyone, for a fantastic Christmas and Christmas dinner. And this calls us for me. Was that? Oh, any questions? Good call. You don't have any. Any questions for him? Joe?
Great. Thanks for the presentation. Very thoughtful. Seems like another layer would be like, how we all seem to know that it's going to rain sometime around Christmas, and it got the predictions got more accurate. How did they do that? From patterns, right? From past, they analyze the weather patterns from the past, and they say, I don't know what they do, what they use, probably AI from before it was AI, but they say, oh, look at this. We've seen this before. And when all these meteorological conditions exist, shit happens, and it's going to probably happen in 97 hours. So that's the next step, I think. Look at all these crazy, warning signals going off. What's going to happen and how do we prevent it would be, I think, another step of
Well, and see, I think that's the point, is that there's so much data, and this is including, exterior environmental data from, snow, rain, sun outages, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, this all adds to the whole ecosystem, right? If you talk about from ingest to transmitter or distribution, everything affects everything. And we just don't have a centralized system to be able to see everything. We're getting there, closer and closer. I used to work for a company that we did, control monitoring orchestration software. And it was really kind of my eye-opening about engineers, because I'm an engineer at heart, and to see what they're doing with that and how they bring everything together is really the kind of piece. I mean, a data piece is massive, right? This is why I say the waterfall of data, because it's not just from devices, it's from the internal environmentals, even IFTTT devices sitting there telling me, is there moisture too high? Is there too much humidity? Is there water leaking somewhere? Whatever it happens to be, all these pieces are now able to go into a centralized dashboard. But because we've been conditioned for years to do device level dashboards, and it's just really not enough view. We have the data, we know it's there. We just need the next step to get to where we can actually sit, talk about the chief engineer of the station and sit behind a console and watch the entire flow as it's moving and know this ahead of time. And that's exactly what you're talking about, is with, how much snow is on top of the mountain? Is it leaking up there? What is this information? We've kind of been doing it all the time with remote sites anyways, right? We need to know what's going on up there. It's just gotten a lot better today.
Hi there. Layer 2, where you're talking about the correlation engine, there needs to be some sort of a standard across manufacturers where these correlation engines can then talk to each other. So say you got a large 2110 environment, the router's screaming that 300 inputs are missing. Well, and the switcher's like, yeah, of course they're missing. They were turned off. So the thing is, you're going to get operational information from one piece of equipment that another piece of equipment would basically squelch. So who would you say needs to be the group that's going to kind of go to all the manufacturers and say, hey folks, we need a standard for this kind of out-of-band communication to make this happen, because without that, you've got no pathways to progress.
I think the biggest thing there is a standard. It's called API. It's the most usable standard we currently have. It kind of gives more information than anything else. I've been asked before about NMOS and why NMOS exists. And I've always had to tread carefully because I'm not a big fan of NMOS, to be honest with you. I'm more a fan about API because that gives us more clarity across the device than anything else. It's the most complete information. And there are ways to get to that. But if we have, the control monitoring orchestration system take API from everything. So that correlation engine actually exists on the data aggregation portion. And then past that, what does that data aggregation portion really do? If we're doing, logic level correlation today, which we can do, we do, what does that look like as we go forward? And with APIs, at least we can now, control and monitor what's happening from every level of the device itself. And that should be able to correlate across the entire ecosystem, because now we're not just looking at, an encoder or a distributing piece of it. And of course, with 2110, all bets are off. But because we're looking at it from that level and we can access it at that level, and if we have an intelligent control monitoring orchestration team that understands, broadcast workflows, it makes it a lot easier to go through that. API is just a really easy way of getting to exactly what you're talking about.
Sounds good.
Yep. Anybody, any other questions or thoughts?
I'm struck by your talk about OI. When I worked at NTC, one of the things that we specialized in there for AT&T was their Skyline data miner implementation.
Mhm.
And although I agree with you about APIs, right? APIs are like opinions, everybody's got one and they all stink.
You're not far off, that's for sure.
The reality about APIs, right, is that vendors often give us things and then take them away. We build workflows around these APIs. They go and they, quote, fix something, unquote, and break our stuff. I really prefer the Skyline data miner approach towards things, where they're asking the vendors that have probes out in the network to standardize what ASI to IP means, or IP to SDI, or SDI to whatever. What are your thinkings, your thoughts about that from a standardization perspective? You asked about not being a fan of NMOS, and one of the things that NMOS is really trying to do very hard is creating this sort of unified ecosystem where ASI means the same thing to you and it means the same thing to me.
Yeah, so I should say it like this. I'm not a fan of NMOS, but I understand why. Because I don't know what vendor out there, if you ask them about a specific protocol, that they're all the same. I don't know any device on earth or in the broadcast workflow that is the same in any respect. So I'm glad data miner's trying to do it that way. We've been trying to do it that way for as long as I can remember, right? Does it make sense? Absolutely. Do vendors do it? Some do. Some don't. Some have their own interpretation of what's going on. And this has always been the big problem in broadcast, right? No single device has the same, even inside a manufacturer, one manufacturer, the same thing can mean a bunch of different things depending on what the device is. We've all seen this for years. So having the realistic, or being realistic about it, and you're right, APIs are all over the place as well, but having a realistic view of a single place where we can put the stamp down, okay, it sounds great, but I've never seen it actually happen. I don't know if we could ever get to that point. I'd like to be able to get there, and this is where kind of OI comes into the place. It doesn't matter what each one of the vendors is saying, the OI has got to interpret it in a way that humans can understand what it actually means. I think that's the only way we get to the next step and getting that clarity back in there, because the vendors aren't going to do it on their own.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions, and ideas? All right. Everyone have a happy new year. Our next meeting will be in January, the third Thursday. Anything, any other input? All right. Great. Enjoy the evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Bill.